All right. Thank you to Peter, to Zoe, and to everyone who was involved in organizing this and making it happen. We're delighted to be joined by these two very distinguished authors who are joining us today, Ivana Sojat from Croatia and Wenying from China. The topic we're going to be discussing is the power of literature as a means of building bridges across the world, of generating empathy, of making connections between cultures. It's an intriguing topic with a lot to unpack. And I'm sure that as we do so, we're going to uncover some of the ways in which the work of our two authors speak to each other and some of the commonalities between them, which I think is going to be really interesting. But it's also a really, really big topic. And so I wanted to kind of start a little bit smaller and maybe invite each of our authors to give us one specific example of a work of literature that for them personally illuminated some other culture or aspect of literature from a different place. Ivana, would you like to begin?
Thank you. Well, as a literature translator, I have the open door to other cultures and other languages. I translate from French and English. So I had the opportunity and the honor to translate some of the greatest writers still living here in our world. So I would like to name two of them who opened me a new perspectives in other worlds, because we can speak in that sort of manner as civilizations as worlds. So first of them, who I translated, was Gao Xingyan, A Soul Mountain. And the other one is Nuruddin Farah, Links, about the Somali war. So that opened me a lot of new perspectives of seeing other people, other parts of the world, to understand them better, not to judge only by news we see on TV, but to see it from a human, personal perspective, which is not very easy each time we hear some bad news from other continents.
Wenying?
Okay. 因为我最近在重读德语文学中托马斯曼的《魔山》，所以我愿意更来谈一谈这个作品。因为德语文学包括德国，它处于欧洲的中心地带，而且德语文学它的传统中有一个非常深刻的典型的方面，就是它的哲理性和思辨性。我每次去欧洲的时候，我都很愿意去看一下当地的教堂。我觉得托马斯曼的长篇小说，它在结构上的那种庞大和严谨，就很像欧洲教堂那种内部的那种庄严，有一种严密的次序。就像哥特式的教堂一样，它有一种有一种稳定的向上的一种力量和向某种崇高的事物致敬的这样一种氛围。所以魔山的整个小说的一个结构，因为我也是这么多年的写作以后，我觉得我现在比较喜欢这样一种有无数的庞杂的细节的结构，然后堆积成为一个巨大的寓言这样一种小说的体力。所以而且这样一个小说的方式，我觉得像我们非常具象的呈现了欧洲文化，特别是德语文学里一种特别典型的这样一种概念和视觉形象。
I think translation is a really interesting way for us to kind of explore this topic. All of us are involved in translation in some way. Ivana, you mentioned Gao Xingjian, Soul Mountain, Lingshan. So I'm assuming you translated that from French into
Yes.
Croatian. Could you tell us a little bit more about that process and how it works? Because I'm assuming kind of Chinese to Croatian is like a language pairing that is not so common in terms of direct translation. So I would guess a lot of translations from Chinese into Croatian must end up going through another language like English or French.
Of course, yes, in world we do have languages that we call small, not because of people speaking them, but because of people, how many people are able to translate from them or on them. So I till now I had the opportunity to translate not only Chinese authors, but also Latvian authors, Estonian, and others from mainly from French. Because believe it or not, I'm better in French than in English. So it was a great, for me, a great challenge to translate Soul Mountain, La Montagne d'Âme from French. But it gave me such power in understanding the culture I practically didn't know. I knew only from TV. From some documentary programs, and that is not that. You should enter the soul of people, and I think I did it because we are superficial mainly, and that's the main role of literature, to go deeper, to go down until you reach the essence of some person who is living in its surrounding, that it's specific for each and every one of us.
And Wenying, your works have been translated into many different languages. When one of your stories or something you have written is translated into a different language, do you still feel involved with that story? Do you still feel attached to it in the same way? Or do you feel when you've finished it, it's sent off into another language, you kind of leave it behind?
翻译是一件很有意思的事情。我有一次和一位翻译家朋友聊起翻译这个工作，他谈到一个很有意思的这么一句话，他说，一部作品是不是真正的好作品，就看它是不是能够经得起2次翻译。可能说，比如说举个例子，从中文翻译成英文，然后它再翻译成克罗地亚语。那因为好的作品，它的核心的部分它是非常坚硬的，那么会有一些作品，它可能经过1次翻译以后，因为它核心的部分没有那么坚硬，或者它没有那么更多的一些普遍的价值或者意义，那么在翻译过程中它就流失掉了。所以我相信我有一些作品被翻译成不同的语言，如果它有它的普遍意义它的核心部分也足够坚硬的话，我觉得它是经得起翻译，而且它永远和我在一起，也会被很多和我可以相通的心灵认知，并且领悟到。
Ivana, how do you think your work as a translator influences your work as a writer of your own fiction and your own works?
Everything that we do in life do something to us. So this translation of mine certainly do something to my writing, even though it doesn't change me as person psychologically. I would say it enriches me. I think I have very rich vocabulary, in Croatian, of course. And I think that every person we meet at the street, everywhere, gives us a little gold coin in our personal wealth. So it certainly do me well, I think so.
Ivana, would you like to tell us a little bit more about some of your most recent work and how you see it fulfilling a role in this task of building bridges and shaping connections?
Well, I write mostly novels and short stories, and my main obsessions are history and psychologies, mostly traumas we do have, mainly in our families, from the closest persons we are surrounded with. My newest book, last book, Ezan in Turkish and Croatian, Adhan in was translated like that in English, speaks about Ottoman Empire in 16th century. It's the history of Europe and Middle East at the same time. It speaks about Islam, about the time era when Islam was at its peak. And so I had 3 years of research, historical research about historical persons at that time. But I made my own history about a boy from this area who became a warrior for the Sultan. But now I'm writing something completely different, what would say in Monty Python. But I also write short stories that are very dark, about traumas caused by mainly mothers in family, because mother is a very mighty person. We should not underestimate it. A mother can destroy, and mother can give wings to her children. So mostly I'm preoccupied by history and psychology.
Wenying, have you explored some of those same topics in your work? Family, culture, history, psychology, mothers?
我谈一谈我最近写的很有意思。我觉得我现在专注于写一个东西方文化的碰撞，这是因为由疫情开始，因为有一段长时期的你被迫在一个非常安静的一个心态和外部环境的这样一个状态里面，会思考很多问题。我现在主要写一个长篇小说，但是我前一阵子也陆续发表了一些短篇，已经开始和这个人类一起面对的这个困境，这个从今年年初开始的疫情相关。这个长篇小说是以一个家庭，还有一个我曾经非常熟悉的一个书吧，就是老书虫，它作为一个背景。各种各样的东西方的人群，然后从疫情的前面到这个疫情被迫的一个人和人的疏离开始，所以我会觉得这可能是一个寓言型的小说，就像我看我们这个中欧文学节里面遇见作家，我非常认真的看了关于 Ivana 的这个遇见他，我得说我赞成他一切的观点，这是让我非常欣喜的。我遇到了这样一个对话者，我在这个新的长篇里可能想要表达的就是，不管是东西方的人群，我们处于不同的文化背景，我们一开始可能觉得我们的沟通是应该的，可能是比较容易的，走到一定的中途，我们觉得它相当的困难。我们有太多的文化的差异，但是到最后，我觉得我还是抱有一个光明的一个希望。我觉得最后，就像Ivana说的一样，我们是一样的。
Ivana, have you attempted to try and kind of process COVID-19 through your own writing and everything that's going on with the pandemic, or is that something that so far has not been something you want to try and implement your writing or work through the process of writing?
My problem is that COVID-19 didn't really affect me psychically because I'm not very social person. I do not like to hang out with many people. I have a few very good friends, but I'm not the person who goes out and make fun with others. I prefer to stay at home, to read, to write, and to, I love horses and dogs, so I love to spend time with them, with animals. Till now, I just wrote one really short story about COVID-19. It is depressing what is happening, especially now in Croatia. Situation is really bad right now. But I'm closed in my room as I am normally when nothing is happening outside.
I think that's kind of what makes it such a challenge, is that because purely from a perspective of narrative, it makes it so hard to do any of the things that we want from literature, right? We like to bring characters together, and it forces us to keep characters apart. We like characters who take the initiative and become the protagonist of the story. And what it asks of us is that we remain passive and do nothing. So I look forward, Wenying, to reading your novel when it's ready. We've talked a bit about the possibilities and the powers of literature, but I'd also like us to maybe consider some of the limitations and maybe some of even perhaps the negative aspects as well. Do you think, for both our authors, I'd like to ask if you think there are any limits to the imaginative powers of the author? Should an author be able to write from the perspective or write about any character? Can we put ourselves into the shoes of anyone? Or does that perhaps have an impact on the authenticity of the work if we do that lightly? Wenying, would you like to go first?
OK， 我会觉得文学会有肯定有非常多的局限性。我想谈的是一个阶级层面的跨越的问题。我觉得，因为我思考过这个问题，对于我来说，我觉得跨越阶层的写作是蛮难的。因为我注意到很多著名的作家，包括像巴尔扎克啊、哈代、福克纳，很多的基本上中国很多非常著名的作家，他们都来自于中产阶级啊，或者是在于他们当时这些作家来说是属于一个小资产阶级的这样一个阶层，就好像非常困难的是，如果你跨越阶层，你往一个更高的阶层去写作，或者是进行，当然中国有过底层写作这样一个讲法，但我是觉得它是一个概念。一个作家真正离开自己熟悉的这样一个社会阶层去描摹另外一个阶层的生活，我觉得有一个巨大的困难。有时候我会觉得跨越阶层的写作，它甚至比我觉得甚至比科幻或者说那种想象的这种文学会更加困难。因为你如何去准确的描摹另一个阶层人的生活？他为了生存的挣扎啊，他的心灵的挣扎和生活生存的挣扎，这是一个他需要无数的非常真实的细节来支撑他。而我觉得你如果去描绘另一个星球上的人是怎么生存，因为他没有具体的参照物，他没有一种特别直接的可以触及到的灵魂性的一些细节，所以它相对来说反而是容易的。跨越阶层的写作，我觉得其实本质上考验一个作家灵魂的宽广度。这个我觉得不同的作家有他不同的答案，但是它是一个巨大的考验，至少对于我来说。
Ivana?
Yeah.
Well, I must say life gave me a lot of miracles. I had a lot of hardships in my life. I even participated in a war, so I know how it is to fight in a war. And when I was a little, I spoke with ghosts. So for me, it is very exhausting, but I am really able to put myself in others' shoes. I can even become man for 400 pages, like in the Adhan. And then all my family know when I'm writing something, I completely change. I completely adapt myself to that person. I change my vocabulary. I change my dressing. I change everything. So I was really hard to live with me during those 3 years of writing the Adnan. I really became man. I changed my vocabulary. I changed everything. I love that. It's hard. After writing some short stories, I'm very exhausted because I try to live all those things mostly. I don't kill people, but I have to put myself in the head of very bad persons, and that is very exhausting, and that is very frustrating sometimes when you know you have to write thinkings of people you disagree with, but you have to do that to put it openly, plainly to other people. But I think that's my role in life. Every one of us have its own role, function in the universe. I think so. It's very pathetic, but my life is very dramatic. Ask my mother.
Okay, I have one more question I'd like us to think about. Wenying, earlier on you mentioned this idea of literature and the analogy with travel, and how like seeing the cathedrals of Germany made you think of the structure of Thomas Mann's writing. But literature is unlike travel in many ways. And when people ask me, you know, what book should I read by a Chinese author so that I can understand China, I don't know how to answer that question, because I would like to recommend a book from an author who represents themselves, who, you know, as an individual. So do you think there's a burden that we can place on authors when we impose on them that necessity of being a representative of a culture, of representing China, of representing Croatia, of being that conduit? Wenying?
我会觉得这是一个蛮难的一个问题，但是同时难的问题往往是有趣的。我觉得作家有他特殊的使命，作家肯定不是导游，他也不是外交官，他的特殊的使命就在于一个很有意思的地方。比如说我会觉得一个人来到这个世界上，比如说今天我和 Ivana 我们两个在交流，如果我们在谈一些人生的关键词就 keywords 的时候，如果我们仅仅抽离到这样一个关键词，那么每个人来到这个世界上，他会经历出生啊，然后他会成长，他会去爱，他会生病，最后每个人走向死亡。如果我们谈论人生概念的时候，我相信我和不同来自于不同文化背景的人，我们就单纯的概念，我们是能够完全可以谈出一个特别统一的一个答案。但是为什么来自于不同文化背景的人，我们会有文化差异？因为在我们成长过程当中，我们经受的教育，我们的家庭背景，我们每天吃的食物，我们的生活的很多东西造成了这个差异。这个文化差异造成了比如说中国和克罗地亚，我觉得我们在比如说谈到爱，那么中国人是两情若是久长岂在朝朝暮暮，那西方人不是这样，就是一个差异。那么作家的真正的使命，我觉得因为作家他有一个非常重要的能力，他能去理解他人，并且他有足够的诚实和勇气去说出他的答案。所以我觉得作家真正的使命是用他的方式来建起一个沟通的，或者说是说出他对于这些差异性的细节的答案。这个答案来自每一个人都是不同的答案，对于每个人都是一个客观的答案，但是一定不仅仅只有一个答案。
Ivana?
I think that we are all products of cultural and geographical space we were born in. So each of us represent that space. We cannot move away from it. We are the products, even if we don't want to be that, we are. There are some semiotical things that are deeply rooted in us by upbringing, the way we were brought up. There are travels which go on in a physical way. It is to go to some country to see it and to know it physically. But there is also emotional, psychological way to meet other countries, other civilizations, and to know them better than physically. There are two levels. And I think the literature plays a great role in that, because in a mighty way, it brings up to others the way one people think and sees the world. So we have a great role as writers to represent all that we are single-handedly.
Okay. There's plenty more that we could go on to talk about, but we are out of time for this event. So thank you again to our participants. Thank you to Peter and Zoe and the organizers. Thank you to Sunny for providing the wonderful interpretation. Thank you to everyone for attending, and I hope you'll continue to attend some of the wonderful more events that are happening as part of the EU China Literary Festival over the next couple of weeks.